nothing significant going on here. I mean, we see this kind of go up and down, but we're always seeing kind of between 55 and 70 sales every month. And that's basically what we saw kind of on the higher end in June. So a little bit more activity, definitely more activity than we saw in May. Hey, what's going on, friends? Market update time. We're going to take a look at the Hawaii real estate market by island all the way across the state. So as always, let's not waste any time and jump right in to the data. Starting off here on the Big Island, we've been tracking active listings for the last about year or so because that is such a key data point as to what's going on in the market. And if you look at today, there are 2,514 active listings on the Big Island. 1 year ago, that number was 2,113. So we have about 400 more active listings today, almost a 20% increase than we had a year ago. So that continues to increase and increase and increase. And we saw that steady increase really happening for the last about 18 months or so. And for perspective's sake, I always talk about this. This number was 3,500 to 4,000 pre-COVID. So it's still under the pre-COVID numbers, but it is continuing to steadily increase month over month. And so that's a good thing. More inventory, more choices for buyers. But again, if you're on the sell side, a little bit more difficult to sell because you have more competition in the market. But looking at sales, right, is what's going on with sales. And this is an interesting kind of dynamic, is we've seen some up and down stuff over the last year, but it's really been flat. I mean, really since April, we've had almost the same number of sales over and over and over again. When you saw more variation, and we got all the way down to 293 sales back in September of last year, that bumped right back up, but we saw some variation in the market. But really for the last few months, there was 368 in April, then there was let's bring the number up here. There was 376 in May, and then in June there was 375. So pretty flat right now, pretty average in terms of what's been going on in the Big Island market in terms of number of sales. Nothing crazy. It's been pretty boring and pretty flat, and that's pretty much a story across the board. So let's now look at the island of Kauai. And similar kind of story over on Kauai. And again, much smaller market, much fewer transactions. But if you look at the number of active listings, there's 529 right now. There was 412 a year ago. So again, about a 20% increase in the number of listings, actually like 25% increase in the number of listings. So we're seeing similar increases in the number of properties for sale on both the Big Island and Kauai. And then looking at the number of sales that are happening on that island, because Kauai has such a small market, we only see between like 50 and 70 sales a month. The line looks crazy and there's lots of up and downs, but that's because there was a variation from 51 in May to 73 in June. So we did see it jump back up, but really pretty average. I mean, for the last 6 months or so, that 70 high 60s number is pretty average across the board for Kauai. So nothing significant going on here. I mean, we see this kind of go up and down, but we're always seeing kind of between 55 and 70 sales every month. And that's basically what we saw kind of on the higher end in June. So a little bit more activity, definitely more activity than we saw in May. But if you compare March, April, those months, pretty much the same, flat and consistent in the Kauai market. If you're looking to relocate here on the Big Island, I want to share with you a resource that we put together. Over 80 agents from my team, expert agents here on the Big Island, put together a relocation guide that will help you evaluate all of the important factors that you want to take into account before you move here to the Big Island. School districts, healthcare, employment, all of the things that you got to think about, we put into one home buyer's guide that will help you figure out what is best when you start this relocation process here to the Big Island. So if you want this guide, just click on the link below, fill out the form. We will send you the guide for free. And if you want to take the next steps and have a conversation with us, we'd be happy to help. All right, let's go over to the island of Oahu. So let's start with sales price on the island of Oahu. And we've seen this up and down month over month. There's some variation, but if you draw kind of a straight line, we're still seeing pretty steady across the board increase. Median price is $765 on the island of Oahu. And again, this mixes in residential and condo sales. So it's everything together. Obviously, residential is going to be higher. Condo is going to be a little bit lower. But looking at inventory, steady increases like we've been seeing. But if you look at the top here, it's definitely tailed off. So even though there's really been a steady increase really since, even if you go back 3 years to January of 22, month over month, it's been a pretty steady increase, but we're seeing a little bit of a drop off here. So we kind of peaked at 3752, But right now, this past month, we were at 37.23. So a little tiny drop, but we didn't see that continual increase, a little bit of a drop off in terms of inventory and number of homes for sale on the island of Oahu. And then closed sales, we've kind of been seeing up and down, up and down, up and down. I mean, but it's kind of been steady. If you average all of this out for the last couple of years, we saw just under 700 closings, 696 closings, which is up. I mean, if you look back at February, we're all the way down below 500 closings. So there's been a big climb since February. But overall, if we look at it over the last 12 months, pretty average number of sales month over month, nothing dramatic happening there. Another boring story. I wish this was a more exciting market report, but at the end of the day, sometimes stability and boring is good. And then finally, on the island of Maui, median sales price, again, up and down, up and down, up and down. But if you average this out, we're still at about $1 million in average sales price. And that's kind of where we've been. It's been pretty flat. If you look back to around April of last year, if you average out the numbers month over month, it's pretty flat in terms of median sales price. So the prices stopped kind of continuing to go up, which we've seen in the years prior. There's definitely been an increase, and it's definitely slowed down on the island of Maui. And then inventory, same, has been a steady climb. But if you look at the little tail end here, just like Oahu, there's been a flattening of the number of new listings. So it peaked at 1,353, but we were at 1,346. So just a few less. But if you look like a year ago, we were looking at 1,084. So 300 more listings than we saw a year ago. But over the last couple of months, it's definitely tapered off, and it's been pretty consistent month over month. No crazy stuff going on there. And the number of closed sales, same thing, kind of month over month. We saw that number of closed sales, and this is a 3-year span, right? So we're looking all the way back to 22. So you can see the kind of the height here back in March of 22, but 125 sales. That's kind of what we've been seeing, between 100 and 150 over the last 6-8 months. So pretty steady, pretty flat in terms of the trend line, in terms of number of closed sales. So again, across the board, the news is there isn't a whole lot of news. The last few months, the market report has felt very, very similar to the month before. But like I said in the past, that's probably a good thing. Some consistency and some boringness is needed in the market, and it's pretty balanced if you look at months of inventory and the amount of properties that are in the market, and the ability for buyers and sellers to get a good deal. It's pretty much even in the market. Buyers can negotiate a little bit more, sellers got to wait a little bit more, but your sellers are still getting a solid price. And if there's a motivated buyer out there, they're still getting really great terms. So it's a good time, kind of whichever side of the fence you are on, but nothing dramatic happening in the real estate market, and I think that is good news. So if you have any questions about this or any specific information about the market that you're in, you can always reach out, Dylan@buybigisland.com, or a link to my calendar is always in the link below. Just click on that, grab a time that works, and we'll do a consultation, answer your questions, and hopefully get you pointed in the right direction. So as always, thank you guys for watching. This is your July market report, and I'll see you guys next month. Aloha.